Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's good to have you all here. If you haven't taken a moment, please turn to your side, in front of you, behind you, and wish those around you a Shabbat Shalom and have the opportunity to introduce yourselves. I know we had a phone call earlier, so I know there are at least a few people here who are visiting, and I just wanted to say welcome. And hopefully if you have any questions following along, you'll be able to turn to someone near you, and they would be happy to show you where we are. But we will try to give you page numbers as often as we can. It's my pleasure to welcome Rabbi David Sofian back onto the Bima.
Who's visiting? Raise your hand. You'll never see me again. So if it sounds terrible, just come back another time when it'll be better.
Much appreciated. Thank you. So we'll begin with some music. I'll let you announce whatever it is that you've chosen to sing.
I wanted to teach a new song, and I wanted to find something in Hebrew, and I wanted to find something that everyone would be able to sing. So I found a song that has 3 Hebrew words. 3 Hebrew words. One of them you know because it shows up in other prayers. It's the word olam. Okay. The second one you might know, maybe not. It's the word chesed. And the third one I am certain you don't know. It's yibaneh. Olam chesed yibaneh. That's the whole song. All the words. The rest are all lalas. So I'm hoping that we can do this. It's a nice kind of meditation to begin with. I would translate it based upon the way this song is written as a world of love is being built. But you can also translate it, an eternity of love is being built. It's one of the wonderful things about the Hebrew language in this case, that the word olam can mean world or eternity. Usually we think of time and space as different things, but not in the Hebrew language. This is the way the melody goes. Lai, 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 lai. La 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 la. You want to try that? La 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 la. La 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 la. Part 2. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La, 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 la. That's the whole song. Who thinks you can do it? Now, my eyes are not perfect, but I can tell if people's mouths are moving. So even if you aren't going to sing, move your mouth. Olam chesed yibaneh. La, 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 la. You can do that part. Olam chesed yibaneh. La 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 la. Olam chesed yibaneh. La 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 la. Olam chesed yibaneh. La 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 la. I will build this world from love. La 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 la. And you must build this world from love. La 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 la. And if we build this world from love, la 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 la. Then God will build this world from love. La 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 la. Olam chesed yibaneh. La 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 la. Olam chesed yibaneh. La 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 la. This song's a little difficult. some of you may have heard it. It's called Lu Yehi. There's lots of Hebrew words to it, so I'm not going to try to teach it to you, but it's almost Yom HaAtzmaut. And this was the song in Israel after the Yom Kippur War in 1973. It was written by Naomi Shemer. You may have heard of her. She wrote Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of Gold, along with 100 other songs that form the basis of the Israeli song canon, if you will. But this has a refrain, Lu Yehi, which means let it be. That should sound familiar to you. That's because when she wrote it originally, she wrote it to the music of Let It Be, because she was trying to do a Hebrew version of it. And her husband said, these words are so beautiful, they deserve a melody of their own. And so she then wrote a melody to go with it, which became an important melody in Israeli culture. Wouldn't it be nice to have that ability? Oh, you should write an important melody and then just sit down and write it. Is it in there? 352. It's on page 352 in the book. עוד יש מפרש לבן באופק, מול חנן שחור כבד, כל שנבקש לא יהי. Which means all that we ask for is that it should be. ואם בחלונות בערב, אור נרות החג רועד, כל שנבקש לא יהי. Lu Yehi, Lu Yehi, Ana, Lu Yehi, Kol Shenivakesh, Lu Yehi. Lu Yehi, Lu Yehi, Ana, Lu Yehi, Kol Shenivakesh, Lu Yehi. I printed this out very small, so it's hard for me to see. לתשמע בתוך כל אלה גם תפילה אחת מפי כל שנבקש לו יהי. וכל ענות אני שומע כל שופר וכל תופים כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי. כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי. כל שנבקש לו יהי. בתוך שכונה קטנה מוצלת בית קט עם גג אדום כל שנבקש לו יהי. זה סוף הקיץ, סוף הדרך, תן להם לשוב חלום, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. ואם פתאום יזרח מעופל אור ראשנו על בכוכב, כל שנבקש לו יהי. אז תן שלווה ותן גם כוח לכל אלה שנאהב, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי.
I'm not sure I'd heard the actual music other than from Let It Be, so that was beautiful.
Hmm?
I don't think I've ever heard that melody. I've only heard it to the other.
You only heard it to
Let It Be. Yeah, so that's beautiful. Thank you. We will welcome in Shabbat as we light our candles on page 2, and I'd like to invite Kit to come forward.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe. You hallow us with mitzvot and command us to kindle the lights of Shabbat. May we be blessed with Shabbat joy. May we be blessed with Shabbat peace. May we be blessed with Shabbat light.
We continue with Chatzikach, page 26.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba.
Amen.
V'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yahomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael b'hagala u'v'izman kariv v'imeru Amen. Yehei shemei Rabba mevarach Le'alam u'al me'al maya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitalev V'yitalal Shemei Dekudusha B'richu Le'ela Min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata Tahamiran bi'alma v'imeru.
Amen. Please rise if you are able as we turn to page 28.
Ya Elai, 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 Elai. Ya Elai, 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 Elai. Ya Elai, 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 Elai. Ya Elai, Elai, Elai. Ya Elai, 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 Elai, Elai. Baruchu et Adonai Hamevorach Hamevorach Baruch Adonai Hamevorach Le'olam va'ed Le'olam va'ed.
We continue in Hebrew on page 30. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim v'chochma poteach she'arim uvitvuna mishane itim umachalif et hazmanim umisader et hakochavim v'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or uma'avir yom umevi layla Umavdil bein yom uvein laila, Adonai tzavaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, Tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv aravim. On page 33, wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us, and the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works, and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto. Le'olam va'ed.
You may be seated as we turn to page 36 for V'ahavta.
Lai, lai, ya la la lai, ya la la lai, ya la 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 lai, ya la la lai, ya la la lai, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. לי לי יא לה לה לה, יא לה לה לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה לה יא לה לה לה, יא לה לה לה, יא לה 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 לה. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך. לי לי יא לה לה לה, יא לה לה לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה לה יא לה לה לה, יא לה לה לה, יא לה 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 לה. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וטפתם על מזוזות ביתך, על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. לי לי יא לה לה לה, יא לה לה לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה לה יא לה לה לה, יא לה לה לה, יא לה 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 לה. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
On page 39, in a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. Page 40.
כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדד בקודש, נוראתי היא לא עושה פלא, נוראתי היא לא עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה. זה אלי ענו ויאמרו, זה אלי ענו ויאמרו, 2, 3, 4, אדוני אילו לעולם ועד, אדוני אילו לעולם ועד. Lai lai la lai la 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 lai, ya la lai 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 la lai, ya lai lai la lai la 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 lai, lai la lai ya la 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 lai.
V'ne'emar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov, ugo'elo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. On page 43 at the top of the page, let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי Shabbat vayinafash.
Invite you to rise as you are able for the Amidah, page 46.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'koneh Hakol, V'zocher Chasei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geula livnei b'neihem, L'man Shemo b'Ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, v'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hako atah Rav lehoshia. Morid hatah, Mechalkel chaim b'chesed, Mechayeh hakol b'rachamim rabim. Somech noflim v'rofeh cholim, U'matir asurim, U'mekayem emunato l'shenei afar. Mi chamocha ba'al gevurot, U'midom elach, Melech memit u'mechayeh, U'matzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman ata l'chayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh, v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yalucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
You may be seated. As we join together praying with the words on the top of page 55. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Ritzei, Ritzei, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, B'amecha Yisrael, U'tefilat אותם באהבה תקבל, ותהי לרצון תמיד, ותהי לרצון תמיד, עבודת ישראל עמך. ברוך אתה אדוני, שאותך לבדך, ביראה נעבוד, שאותך לבדך, ביראה נעבוד.
On page 59, when we behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and stars that you set in place, what are we humans that you are mindful of us, we mortals that you take note of us? You made us little less than divine, adorned us with glory and majesty. You gave us dominion over your handiwork, laying the world at our feet. How majestic is your name throughout the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. Page 60.
Oseh shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, ve'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, ve'imru, Amen. Yalla la 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 la, yalla la la la, yalla la, yalla la, la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la la la, yalla la, yalla la, yalla la la la. Oh, say shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, ve'imru, Amen. Oh, say shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, ve'imru, Amen.
Take a moment for private prayer and reflection.
יהיו לרצון אמרי פי והגיון ליבי לפניך Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri, V'goali, V'goali, Osei Shalom Bimroma, Hu'yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, ve'imru, Amen.
As we prepare for our Torah service, I invite you to turn to page 244 and rise in body or spirit as you are able.
Ein kamocha ba'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha, malchutecha malchut kol amim, u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor.
Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai lo ve'olam va'ed, Adonai oslemo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo shalom, ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, udevar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael, mikdushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadol Adonai iti, Uneroma Shemo Yachdav, Lecha Adonai Hagedula veHagevu, veHatiferet, veHanetzach, veHahod.
Ki chol hashamayim uvaretz, Ki chol hashamayim uvaretz, Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, V'ami na'aseh lechol lerosh. I think you can be seated. And I'm happy to say that pregnancy has not raised Rabbi Tina's voice.
Our Torah portion this evening comes from the double portion of Tazria Mitzorah. I will be reading from the very beginning of it, for reasons you will see, and also because it is the beginning. But in this Torah portion, we get a wonderful set of laws that is everybody's favorite. What? Especially for B'nai Mitzvah students. Because our portion starts out with the laws of purification after childbirth, goes into diagnosing and treating skin diseases, which we translate often as leprosy, but probably wasn't, and that's a conversation for a different day. And then the priestly rituals when this tzara'at affects not the skin, but clothing and houses as well. And then, since we started out with women in childbirth, we get when there are discharges from men that are not either regular discharges or seminal emissions, or irregular ones. And then the portion ends with the account of female impurities through the menstrual cycle. Again, excellent things that 12 and 13-year-olds love studying and reading about. But when you get past the ick factor, there are a lot of interesting questions raised and values that come out of our text. And so it is still one of the nicer portions, I think, for talking about. If you want to keep a finger on page 250 in the prayer book, we'll join in the blessing together. If you are following along in the Plaut Torah commentary, I'll be reading on page 735. And before we do that, you told me at the beginning, too. What? I said, and you reminded me at the beginning, too. It being the third Friday of the month, if there's anybody celebrating a birthday or anniversary or something special this month that would like to assist in leading with the Torah blessings, I will bribe you up here with chocolate. We might need to up our bribery game. We'll still say the blessings together, so even if you are not formally Jewish, I can still bribe you with chocolate. We still like celebrating. We'll join together, page 250. Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam vaed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. I bet you've never seen the inside of a Torah scroll before. So you get to go up close and personal. And I believe you'll be hearing a little more about our scroll shortly. So I won't go into why we're reading specifically from this one. Amen. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, and Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Daber el bnei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel, lemor, saying, Isha ki tazria v'yalda zachar, a woman who gives birth to a male child, v'tima'a shiv'at yamim, she will be impure for 7 days, ki yamei nidot dota, which is essentially like the days of, one more word. Nidat dota titma, like the days of her menstrual cycle, essentially. Uviyom hashmini yamol vasar orlato, and on the 8th day they will circumcise the foreskin of the baby. Vishloshim yom ushloshet yamim, and for 33 days, teshev bidmei tahora, that for 33 more days she will continue to be in the days of her impurity. Bechol kodesh lo tig'a, and anything that you might recognize that word, the root kodesh, anything that's sort of set aside as sanctified, she shouldn't touch. Ve'el hamikdash, Lo tava'u, and she shouldn't come into the sanctuary, ad milat yamei tahara, until the days of her impurity have been filled. And this is the part that we don't necessarily like as much. V'im nikeva telad, v'tim shiv'im shivu'ayim, and if it is a female child that she gives birth to, instead of 1 week of impurity, it is 2 weeks. Ki nidota v'shishim yom v'sheshet yamim teshev al demei tahora, and it is for an additional 66 days that she stays in this state of impurity. So in essence, double what the boys for birth up, double what happens after the birth of a boy. Uvmelat yamei tahora leven or levat, and when she has fulfilled the days of her impurity, whether it's for a son or for a daughter, tavi keves ben shnato leolah, she should bring, I believe that is a sheep. Nope, a lamb. A lamb within its first year as an offering. Uven yonah, and a dove, or tor, or a turtle dove, a pigeon or a turtle dove. Lechatat, as a sin offering. El petach ohel moed, to the entrance of the tent of meeting. El hakohen v'hikrivu lifnei Adonai, and shall bring it to the Kohen, who will sacrifice it or bring it near before Adonai. V'kaper aleha v'tahara, and he will make atonement for her, and she will be purified. Mimkor demeha, from her blood. Zot Torat hayeldat, this is the Torah. These are the laws of the one who gives birth. Lizachor or lenekeva, to a male or to a female. V'im lo timse yada de se, and this is one of my favorite verses, that if she doesn't have enough means to suffice for the lamb, v'lachacha shtei turim, instead she takes 2 doves, making sure I'm getting my animals right, or shnei b'nei yonah, or 2 pigeons, echad le'olah v'echad lechatat. So one for that first offering we talked about, the olah, and one for the chatat. V'kaper aleha hakohen v'tahora. And likewise these will make atonement upon her and through the priest, and she will be purified. We'll join together in the blessing after our reading. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. And for those brave enough to come up for something you are celebrating, and those who are not, may the one who creates joy and fulfillment bless those who come forward in celebration of a simcha in their lives. May they remain grateful always. It's here, not in the book. Aware of their blessings, alive to the wonder that has touched their souls. Let them be messengers of delight, bringing warm smiles and the glow of happiness to all they encounter. And may the love and good fortune they have known inspire them to share with others. Our hearts rejoice with our friends today. As we say, give thanks to the eternal, for God is good. God's love endures forever. And I told you I would bribe you with chalk. There's a tradition that the words of Torah should always be sweet, so the chocolate is not entirely random. With the Torah scroll in our midst, we also take a moment not only to pray for that which we are thankful for, but also for healing and love and strength for those in need. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. As a congregation, we pray especially this Shabbat for Jeremy Watts, Tiffany Lobertini, Mariah Strickland, Sheila Carrico, Robert Stammel, Donna Holt, Grace Gressley, Eileen Eady, David Woods, Joey Evans, Charles Fay, Kim Howell, Julie Wagner, Eleanor Must, Ann Burke, Catherine Cooper, Sid Gross, Cicely Nathan, Jim Locke, Gary Pacernick, Bob Kahn, Steve Samuel, and Arlene Rasnick. If there are other names that ought to be added, I invite you to share them aloud.
In the middle of page 253. Misheberach Avotenu Mikor Abracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mikor abracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Rofeh HaCholim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings healing to those in need. I'll invite those who are able to rise as we turn to page 252, and I'm letting you decide how we are lifting the scroll.
V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yad Moshe.
So, yesterday, I shared in our online tidbits a short blog about Yom HaShoah. In particular, I called attention to the history of our Czech Holocaust scroll, which comes from the town of Ceske Budejovice. We have been entrusted with this scroll by the Memorial Scrolls Trust, located out of London. Our scroll is one of 9 that comes from Ceske Budejovice. 6 scrolls, including ours, reside here in the United States, 1 in Canada, and 2 in England. In 1942, over 350 synagogues in Bohemia and Moravia were instructed to send their Sifrei Torah, their Torah scrolls, and other ritual objects to Prague to be collected. Over 1,800 scrolls were sent, where they were then stored, unfortunately, in a damp warehouse that had once been a 16th century synagogue. They remained there, seemingly forgotten, until 1963. Through the efforts of what we now call the Memorial Scrolls Trust, over 1,500 scrolls were brought to London and were restored. The year 2022 marked the 80th anniversary of the efforts by the Czech Jews to preserve these sacred texts, and 2023 is the 60th anniversary of the Memorial Scrolls Trust. As we are in a period that we prepare to gather on Sunday as a Jewish community for Yom HaShoah, or at least our observance here, I just wanted to take the opportunity to share with you an important lesson that accompanies the words of Torah in this particular scroll. And that has to do with hope. So I really liked Lu Yehi, by the way. But in order to share that part of this story with you, it's important that you learn more about the congregation that once read from our Torah. As I mentioned before, our scroll is from Ceske Budejovice, which is a large town on the Vltava River, about 90 miles south of Prague. At one time, it was the capital of southern Bohemia and part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, now in the Czech Republic. There are records of Jews having lived there since the 14th century. Unfortunately, in 1505, after 164 years in the city, the Jews were violently attacked, ultimately expelled from the city. There were 9 that had been accused of ritual murder and actually burned alive, and 13 had been drowned. This isn't even the Holocaust yet. The next year, 23 Jewish children were forcibly removed from their parents and baptized. Jews were only permitted to resettle after the emancipation of Austro-Hungarian Jews in 1848, nearly 350 years later. But soon after, a new congregation was established, and a cemetery was consecrated as well. In 1868, a new synagogue was built in an impressive neo-Gothic style. Until World War II, the synagogue was the center of Jewish life there. It served more than 1,100 Jews in the community. Those who lived there in the Jewish community were highly assimilated, well-rooted in their city, and felt very strongly Czech. They owned small businesses. They were doctors, teachers, artists, civil servants, and salespeople. Most were educated and lived comfortably. Their children went to Hebrew school twice a week, and they went to school with their non-Jewish neighbors. I'd like to share with you now a little bit about one young man in particular who was born there in 1930, and his name is John Freund. John is still alive, by the way, and lives in Toronto. John talks about what life was like for him. In 1939, he was 9 years old, fit and muscular, at least according to him, and he loved sports, including, David, you'd like this, ping pong. He said he learned that before soccer, hockey, and ice skating. He and his friends would enjoy playing marbles on the sidewalk. They enjoyed testing their courage and their limits. His father, Gustav, was a pediatrician who had studied in Berlin, and his grandfather, Alexander, had been a county judge. But as we know, life changed drastically for the Jews in March of 1939, at least over in Ceske Budejovice, after the annexation of the region by the Third Reich. In June 1939, the offices of the congregation were closed. The Jewish shops had been attacked on July 21st. As the Nuremberg laws began to take effect, the Jews of Ceske Budejovice were no longer allowed to attend school, to join cultural activities, and the places to which they could be admitted were then restricted. They confiscated musical instruments. Children were forbidden to attend school, to have non-Jewish friends, to go to public swimming pools, public parks, movie theaters, and ice skating rinks. On August 16th of 1940, the Jews of the town were forced to relinquish their homes. In his memoir, John remembers There was one time that his old third-grade teacher actually risked his safety when he saw John out near his home. As he passed by, he took John's hand quickly, and he told him, "Be brave." John describes this time when all 300 Jewish families who lived there became much closer as a community because they had had everything taken from them except for one another. There were, he says, about 200 Jewish youth, about 100 between the ages of 10 to 18. In his memoir, he wrote, "Did all of this drive us to despair? No way. Life went on." He continued, "We wore our stars of David, but not in shame. They improvised schools, families had to move in together, but during the summer of 1940, the Jewish community was able to rent a narrow strip of land on the Vltava riverbank that would then become a Jewish swimming place, where Jewish children could swim every day, adults could swim on Sundays. It was, he said, about a 30-minute walk or perhaps a 10-minute bike ride from his home. The river was unfortunately filled with sewage, and the swimming that you would do past the shoreline, he said, was treacherous. But it was a place, he said, where they could come, be together, cool off, and still have fun. This is where I get to the more remarkable part. It was during this summer of 1940 that John and a friend of his, Ruta Stadler, who was 15, created something absolutely remarkable. Ruta had been a talented writer when he could go to school. He loved to read and to write, and he decided that writing would be the best thing for him to do, to fight back by being happy. He wanted to create a magazine for young people that they could read and share at the swimming hole. He invited them all to use their imaginations and to contribute. And then he created this magazine called Kleppi, which means gossip or rumors. And in the introduction to it, he wrote, "Since we've exhausted every type of entertainment that can be done at our beautiful swimming area, I want to outline a few words about those who come every day and add a few witty remarks about them." And he did, listing everyone's names and always trying to say interesting things about them, including who had a crush on whom. He said that the magazine's mission was to prove that a healthy spirit and a sense of humor is within us, and that we are not diminished by the difficulties of our days. We are capable in moments of rest from our labor to occupy our minds with worthwhile thoughts and humor. As Ruta tried to get other children involved, he wrote, "Every day there are new rules about what we can and can't do. Well, the one thing that can't be restricted is our minds. No one can forbid us to think. So I'm asking you to use your minds and write something. Think about seeing your name in print," he said, "and how it will make you feel. Ours is a small newspaper, but it can have positive influence on our lives. I know that each of you has something to contribute, something important to say." This magazine became very popular among the children. The kids loved to submit their hand-drawn pictures. John had a typewriter and was able to type it up, and the children would then pass it between their families and read it that way. This group of children ended up being able to hide those magazines, and they are actually on display. I can send you a link if anyone's interested to see what that looks like today. The youth decided in 1941, the second summer, that they were spending time at the swimming hole, to show one another that they were so valuable to one another, that their friendship meant something. And they made a blood contract. They swore that they would be friends forever. In spite of the war and the sense of danger that surrounded them, they wanted to hold on to the hope and the belief that they would be fine and that their friendship and their lives would endure. And this oath would honor and unite them in this friendship. Unfortunately, most of these children from Ceske Budejovice would not go on to survive the war. On June 5th, 1942, the synagogue in the community where this Torah scroll was bombed by the Germans. On April 18th, 1942, 909 were deported to the death camps. Another 386 who had previously left the area were also deported during the war. The rabbi of the congregation, Rabbi Rudolf Ferda, traveled with the first trainload of Jewish people who were sent to the Terezin ghetto in 1942. There he continued to conduct weddings and bar mitzvahs and comfort the bereaved and the lonely until he himself was sent to Auschwitz towards the end of 1944. But John Freund survived. He was one of 120 of the 1,500 Jews of Ceske Budejovice who made it through the war. In April of 1942, the Freund family boarded a transport, and they spent the following year and a half in the ghetto in Terezin, where John's father worked as a doctor, and John lived in the facility for young people. The family was transported to the concentration camp in Auschwitz in December of 1943. They lived together in a so-called family camp until April of the following year. After the liquidation of this family camp and the subsequent selections, John was able to be included in a group of boys who were sent to work in spite of their young age. This became the topic of a book that he helped to write. His mother died in a gas chamber, and his father and his brother were shot during the evacuation march under unknown circumstances. In January of 1945, John was included among prisoners who were marched inland from the abolished concentration camp. He survived the death march and then spent 2 months in another camp, eventually liberated by the American Army during yet another march. After the war, he returned to Ceske Budejovice, but since there was nobody with whom he could stay, he then went to the countryside to help with agricultural work. After summer vacation, he began studying grammar school in Prague, where he then lived with his aunt, who became his guardian. And it was after February of 1948 that he accepted an offer from a Canadian Jewish organization, where he went to Canada and has been living in Toronto with his wife since then. The congregation of Ceske Budejovice revived after the war, but sadly it ceased to function in 1970 because of a lack of members. In 1991, only one Jew, an elderly woman, remained in the town. And today, all that remains of this Jewish community is a stone monument to mark where the ornate Gothic synagogue once stood, and of course the 9 scrolls that were preserved by the Memorial Scrolls Trust. Our Czech Torah scroll, aside from a few moments ago, was last read by our confirmation students on June 5th, 2022, as we observed Shavuot. To the day, exactly 80 years prior, the synagogue that once housed that scroll, had been destroyed by the Nazis. Yet the voices of our children continued to keep the words of Torah alive. On Tuesday, Yom HaShoah, I shared the story of our Czech scroll when I spoke at the University of Dayton Lifelong Learning Institute. It was on that very day, 81 years ago, on April 18th, that the residents of Ceske Budejovice had been deported to the death camps. Yet we continued to tell their story. Our scroll, written nearly 200 years ago, has long taught us of the genesis of the Jewish people, our exodus from slavery to freedom, and our march to the Promised Land. But if we listen more closely, it also tells the stories of those from this town of Ceske Budejovice. It bears witness to the events of the Holocaust, and it also provides our hope for the future, especially when we learn the story of Ruda and John and all of the underground reporters who never gave up hope. According to Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, hope is capable of sustaining life, even when an outcome is not guaranteed. In Frankl's words, everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. This Sunday, I will be traveling with our Czech scroll to Cleveland, where it will then join 18 other scrolls from not from Ceske Budejovice, but other scrolls that were saved by the Memorial Scrolls Trust. These scrolls are coming together from Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania, and it will be something special to know that they will be coming together for the first time in 60 years. So this weekend, we remember and we give honor to those who once read from it. We continue to read from it. Soon, in over Soon, in a little over a month, we will once again hear the words of Torah spoken from it by our children, inspiring us through the words of the commandments, but also reminding us of the unending strength of the Jewish spirit. In just a moment, we will rise to return the Torah to the Ark. But first, we recognize that we are in a period of the Omer, which is the time between Passover, the second day of Passover, until we get to Shavuot, which is that time I was sharing with you that our children will be reading from the scroll. I invite you to turn with me to page 278 for the blessing of the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat ha'omer. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctifies us with mitzvot and commands us concerning the counting of the Omer. Hayom shisha asar yom shehem shnei shavuot u'shnei yamim la'omer. Today is 16 days, which is 2 weeks and 2 days of the Omer. I invite you to please rise if you are able as we turn to page 256 as we return the Torah to the Ark. You may be seated. I forgot to mention that our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders helped to create a beautiful presentation board about Ceske Budejovice that I'll be taking with me to Cleveland, that they themselves will be sharing information about it on Sunday. And there are 2 books in our library. One is called Spring's End, and the other is The Underground Reporters, both which give a lot more information and examples, both from the words of John as well as from other members of their community about the newspaper that they had put together. on page 293. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us. We are in a period of Aninut for David Wilson, and a period of Shloshim for Herman Charlie Knoll, Rabbi Shay Kane, and Jessica Kirshner. We also remember those who died at this season in years past, those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own, for which we are observing yahrzeits. We think of Nathan Apple, Sherry Berger, Regine Leeds Bicknell, Harriet Blumenthal, Mose Bramson, Catherine Brooke, Leopold Brown, Carolyn Kaplan, Joseph T. Klein, Marvin Cutler, Harry Jacobs Daniels, Henry Euphrat, Theodore Farrer, Jack W. Feigelson, Neil B. Frank, Joseph Freemus, Esther I. Garfinkel, Molly Gerbs, Kurt Goodman, Jacob Greenbaum, Raymond Hamblin, Julia Jacobs, Jesse H. Jacobs, Kate Lauterbach, Caroline Feinberg-Levitt, Joseph B. Miller, Jack Resnick, Thelma Sokol, Jeanette Sternberger, Max D. Sussman, Louis Traxler Jr., Louise Vaughn, and Saul Whitteiler. If there are other names to be mentioned or perhaps pronounced more correctly, I invite you to do so by calling their names out now. I invite all who are remembering or in mourning to please rise. We as a congregation rise together to join in the words of Kaddish on page 294. Yit Gedal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, V'yalma divra chirte v'yamlich malchute, V'chayechon v'yomechon, Uvchaye dachol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'alev v'yithalal Shmei dekud shah barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Zirchonam livracha, may their memories always and only be for a blessing among us. Amen. You may be seated.
Adon Olam is on page 321. There's a few of you here who might remember this melody. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, V'yed Nasa, B'chefso Kol, Azai Melech, Shemo Nikra. V'yacharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu hoveh v'hu yihiyeh b'tifara אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לי עת נשא בחפצו כל זי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא הוא היה הוא הווה הוא יהיה בתפארה אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לי עת נשא בחפצו כל אז זי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה הוא הווה בתפארה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה והוא היה והוא הווה בתפארה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you again, Rabbi Sofian, for your music. Always a delight to have you in town. Last time I visited you in Israel, now you're here. I don't know that I'll be there next time, but we're working on it. Anyway, Shabbat Shalom. We're joined together in the hallway for Kiddush and Motzi, and we'll see you in a moment. Hopefully we'll be there in a few years.